Good evening, Washington, D.C., Facebook, Instagram, who's ever watching. Welcome to the Straight Up Talk with Earl Rush show. My name is Earl Rush, and this evening I have the honor and the pleasure of having as my special guest Big George Dennis from Philadelphia. I've known George for a long, long time, at least 20 years, going on 20 years, maybe 18 or 19, regardless. He's a promoter, an instructor, a performer, a dance group director, master of ceremonies, and event host, doing big things up in Philadelphia. The name of his company is Mambodelphia. So we're going to get back to try to find out some new things about George that I myself wanted to know about, and hopefully you and the viewers get to find something new about him. So we're going to go right to George right now. Big George, are you there?
What's up, Go-Go?
All right, how you doing?
Doing blessed, brother. Feeling good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, George. You know, I don't go anywhere. I just stay home, so I can't get in any trouble. So I'm doing pretty good. You know, I thought I got pretty sick back in February, so I may have had some kind of strain or something. I don't know, but it's all psychological now. That cold just got me spooked, but I'm doing I'm doing pretty good right now. But I don't go out anywhere though.
Well, you still doing your thing, man. You found a way to keep us entertained, keep us engaged. And it hasn't stopped you from promoting, man.
You know what, George? I think I started this show because I don't have any friends, and the only way I can get to talk to somebody is to maybe do an interview. That's why I'm all excited. You see, I'm all excited. I'm standing up. I usually stand up when I talk to the ladies, but I'm excited because I get to talk to somebody. You know, everybody's texting, and things get taken out of context when you get texted. So I like to talk to somebody, a person, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way.
George, we're going to get straight to it because I know you're busy. So what I want to know is, where did you grow up and what were you doing around 5 years old? What were you doing for fun?
All right. So born and raised in Philadelphia, youngest of three, only boy. So I grew up like a typical kid in the city, just running around the streets, getting into trouble, being a knucklehead. Luckily, I didn't get into any kind of serious trouble, but grew up unscathed. By the time I was a teenager, got into basketball. Played basketball in high school. Got recruited in college. That sent me down to North Carolina. I played at Elon University, 4 years there, Division I school. Yeah, and then after that, I went into the military right after college.
Okay, so I know your temperament. This is kind of like a silly question, but I want to ask you anyway. You're kind of a large human being. So when you were growing up, did you ever bully anybody, or were you just nice temperament like you are now?
So the funny thing is, growing up, I was never the biggest kid around. I was actually pretty small until I got to high school. So I couldn't be the bully even if I wanted to growing up. so it was never my mentality. So by the time I got a little size on me, I was to the point where I was so mild-mannered and laid back that I just wasn't really ever into drama.
Okay, all right. Okay. So you're born and raised from Philly. Okay.
Yeah.
I love Philadelphia. They carried us through well, we're not gonna get into no polite. We don't do drama.
We're not gonna go there.
We don't do drama on this interviews, so we're not gonna go political. Anyway.
Yeah.
Moving right along. So you weren't a bully when you were growing up. Did you do any dancing when you were a younger gentleman? When you were in high school, did you take any classes?
No, never took classes. You know, in the streets, we did the house parties and stuff like that. I always enjoyed listening to music, and I was never the type to just stand around if I heard I didn't consider myself, sir. You know, I had no formal training or anything like that. I was just like the kid in the neighborhood. We listened to music, and in that era, you know, you danced. You didn't stand around.
Right.
You know, we're talking the 90s where the music was danceable. MC Hammer was big back then, so you know it was cool to dance at that time.
Yeah. You know, speaking of Hammer, I don't think he gets his prop because he had financial troubles at the end of his career. But when he was right, he was tight. Hammer was
the
tight.
man. Oh yeah. Everybody tried to clown him because they said he was commercial and all this and that, and now all the artists now are commercial, and what they used to call selling out is now just good business.
Exactly. Well, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
We're not going to go into that. I looked up one day and I saw Hardcore George was directing the Bachata group. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? But we're going to talk about that later. We don't want to get out of chronological order. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we're in high school. Were you smart in school? Were you good with the books?
I was smart, but I wasn't a good student. So I was a knucklehead growing up. You know, it was nothing but, I won't say nothing but trouble, but there was a lot of trouble around, and I would get caught up in a lot of nonsense. And so by the time I got to high school,
right,
you know, I was an average student. I wasn't failing, but I wasn't lighting up the world either. You know, I was just kind of coasting by. And I think sports is what set me straight. It gave me something to focus on.
Okay.
And a purpose, yeah.
All right. Did you go to a public school or did you go to a private school in high school?
I went to public school.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
Okay. You know, I told myself I wasn't going to ask you this, but what the heck?
Oh, boy.
If I'm going to Philadelphia, where do I want to go for a cheesesteak?
Oh, okay. So you'll probably get different answers from everybody, but here's a place, and I'm going to tell you what makes this legitimate. There's a place called Max's, MAXX. Okay. It's on Erie Avenue in Philadelphia, and most people probably wouldn't know what I'm talking about. However, I think it was a couple years ago, Kevin Hart just got a mural right at the top of the cheesesteak place. Because he grew up down the street from there. Me and Kevin Hart grew up in the same neighborhood. He was the cheesesteak place was the middle ground. I grew up 4 blocks in one direction. He grew up 4 blocks in the other direction. So if you ever come to me, hands down, that's the best cheesesteak place in Philadelphia.
Okay. All right. Okay. Enough about the cheesesteak. We don't need to be stereotyping. Philadelphia is known for much more than just cheesesteak. Yeah. So we were average student in high school. So what were our plans? What were we thinking about? Were we trying to go to college, or what were we trying to do?
You know, I was honestly just coasting by. I think basketball saved me because it gave me something to focus on. I had 2 older sisters. Both of them were already in college. And so they just had it set in my head that I was going. Now, So I just knew that I was going to go to college. I didn't know where and I didn't know to do what, but they would always say it. So it was just a given that I was going. Fortunately, I was able to get a scholarship. And I remember my first year in school, I was just trying to figure it out. I was just trying to survive and figure out the whole academic thing. Because I just wasn't mentally prepared. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So I didn't have much direction, you know, at 17, 18 years old, to be honest with you.
Okay. But you ended up going to the military instead of college, yes?
No, I actually did. I did 4 years of college. I was, the funny thing is my freshman year, I remember I was struggling so bad that the coach, he actually sent a letter to my parents saying that he didn't know if I was going to make it through school. He didn't think I was focused enough.
Right.
But I actually ended up not only graduating, but I was captain of the team 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. And I ended up being the homecoming king my senior year.
Okay.
very inspirational that the Enquirer had wrote an article. I think it was on Christmas Day in '99, and that article ended up getting distributed all the way up and down the East Coast. So it in some ways put the college on the map. So I turned it around. I think I did okay, considering I didn't have any direction when I started.
Sure. I apologize because the question I just asked you was a dumb question. The first thing you said when you came on is that you did 4 years in college. So I apologize for that. But
all good, brother.
I don't want anybody to think that I'm not listening to you, and I don't want you to think I'm not listening to you. I apologize. Okay, so you had some direction with the basketball team. That's great. Okay, so what did you major in when you were in school?
Communications. I took a class in public speaking my sophomore year, and it was something about that class that I fell in love with. And then that was in the communications field, so I decided to give that major a try, which it gave me a little bit of background in journalism, corporate communications, public relations, and so that's what my degree is in communications.
Okay, so now it all falls into place. Now I see why you're so relaxed behind the microphone, and why you're so nice to people when you're out in a social environment. Okay, that's where that training came from. Okay. Yeah. All right. So how did we get into the military?
So when I graduated, went back home, was working at home, and just a regular 9-to-5 thing. It was kind of boring to me. I was used to that team environment that you would get playing sports, and I was missing that. So believe it or not, the whole military thing came just out of boredom. I just thought, I need to do something different. And somebody said, why don't you try the military? So I went to a recruiter, and I had the choice between active duty and reserves. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to do full-time military. So I said, let me just dip my toe in the water and let me join the reserves. And so I joined the Army Reserves in 2000. It was late 2000 going into 2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I did some research on you, and they told me that, first of all, where did you do your tours? But they told me while you were doing your tours overseas, you were asked to teach the gentlemen and the ladies in the service how to dance salsa. Tell me all about how did that even come about?
All right, so let me backtrack a little bit. So when I was done my training and finished in 2001, I actually went back home, and I was home for a couple months, and then 9/11 happened. Remember, 9/11 was September 11, 2001. So right after that happened, 48 hours later, my unit got sent down to North Carolina to be stationed down there. So it was down there that I took my first salsa classes while I was stationed in North Carolina. And I continued down there for a couple years, dancing and training just for fun. And then we got sent over to Iraq. Okay. So in Iraq, they had what they called an MWR. It was just recreation for troops. And I guess one of the top commanders was Puerto Rican woman, Colonel, and she thought it would be a good idea to have salsa lessons in the base. Okay. So my captain, trying to earn some brownie points, said, yeah, I got the perfect guy for the job, because I was the one guy in the unit that he knew could dance salsa, but I was not an instructor at the time. Okay. So the first class that I taught, it was all the high level brass. So I was nervous because you make a mistake with these people, you might be cleaning toilets for for the rest of your career, right? Okay. So I wasn't really too into it. But then the following week, this unit came in from Brooklyn, National Guard unit, all Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. So my first class had 11 people in it. My second class had 125 people in the class.
Wow.
And from there, it was the biggest thing on base. Every week, people look forward to it, and it instructor, the instructor, it was just kind of something that took on a life of its own.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you know Beto down there in North Carolina, correct?
I do. Yes, I do. So I was taking classes in Fayetteville, North Carolina, but then some of my friends said, let's go up to Raleigh. They dance on Sunday nights up there. And I remember going up there and I said, man, these guys up here are smooth. And, I took the class that was before the Sunday night, and Beto was the instructor.
Wow.
Yeah, he was the instructor, man. And I still remember this, that he was demonstrating on teaching people how to spin. And so he called me out. He's like, here, come out here. And he had me spin him a couple times. And then after I finished spinning him, he kind of gave me a look. He's like, whoa, that's good, man. It's like, that's pretty good. Yeah. I was like, well, I mean, I'm 6'5". I should be able to spin somebody. I can at least do that.
Okay. All right. So you knew Beto down there. That's nice. I knew you knew him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that you had taken some classes from him down there.
Oh yeah, man. You know what? As a matter of fact, probably one of the best followers to this day, at least for me personally, I'm biased, is Joy Manning. That was his time, and she was incredible. And I remember learning on 2. And dancing with her, she made it so easy to feel the music. She just had a way of just putting you at ease, and I love dancing with her. She was the best.
Yeah. I remember her. I even got a chance to dance with her.
Yeah, she was incredible. She's actually up in New Jersey now. I saw her probably 6 months before the pandemic. She came out. And she hung out. She came out dancing at the atrium. We were there, and she still has it, man. She still has it. Yeah. Wow.
So George, what made you take your first class? Someone had to say, "Come on, let's do this or something." How did you get into taking a salsa class? Did it have anything to do with a lady, or did you just want to take it?
Man, it took a couple different tries for it to stick. So the first time I was introduced to it was in college. There was a Spanish cultural center, and there was a Costa Rican lady there that wanted to teach me then. And we're talking 1998. I wasn't into it. And then when I moved back after college back to Philly, a couple people at the job where I was working said, you need to go to the atrium and check out the atrium. So I went over there, but I was late for the class. So I never actually took the class. I just sat there and watched.
Right.
And then after that, I got sent down to North Carolina. And so then one of my buddies in the unit, because I used to always go to the regular club, the hip hop English clubs, and I would have a couple drinks and I'm off dancing. I wasn't standing on the wall. So my buddy said, yo, we need to go to the Spanish clubs because they got the women there, and let's go check it out. Now, for me, it wasn't about the women. It was about being in a place that didn't have as much drama. And so I was like, I need a different scene. And when I went there and checked out the club, I said, oh my gosh, so you can actually dance with different women and don't have people ice grilling you and getting all angry at you. I said, I need to get into this. This is more my speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then
most people get in it because it's for the women.
Well, I didn't really have any problems, meeting women. So it wasn't about that for me. It was more so I wanted to just hang out in a place that didn't have drama. If I'm being honest.
No, I knew you were going to be honest. You can be honest with me. I tried not to put you on the spot, but I probably knew that was the case. I mean, it just seemed like the ladies seem to like to be around you. You can tell. You can tell who the guys and ladies like. So and they like tall guys as well. So you're a good-looking young man. So I can see him. Being all over.
Well, I like it.
So we're coming from the military. We're teaching over there, so you decided to move back to Philly and teach. Does that happen?
Yeah, so I came back. I wasn't thinking about teaching. So when I was over there in Iraq, I felt, even though I was teaching, it wasn't the same as being in the dance scene. So I was just excited to get back to dancing. I was watching videos. So back then you had Mambo TV, Boston on 2.com. So I'm just watching all these people dancing, Ishmael, Magna, all these Grizel, all these amazing dancers. And I just wanted to get around them. So I moved back to Philly to get closer to that action. And so the atrium was the place where I would still taking lessons, even though I was more of an advanced dancer, I would still take lessons there. And then I was traveling to New York to train in New York, taking some lessons up there. And it started getting kind of expensive. It was just getting pricey because I was doing it 4, 5, 6 days a week.
Right.
So one of the guys that I would travel up with, I said, yo, man, this is getting so pricey. I'm gonna have to get me a second job, soon. And he said, well, why don't you just teach? You can make money teaching. And I said, well, I don't see myself as an instructor. I just love to dance. But then Barbara got wind of the conversation. So she decided that she was going to figure out a way to get me into teaching. And it really wasn't an option. One day I'm in class and she puts me in the front of the class and she walks in and then she says, hey, George, I got to step out for a second. Can you run the warm up in class? And now I'm in front of the class running the warm up.
Right.
So that happened. And then I think it was a couple weeks later, I'll never forget it. She used to have a pre-Thanksgiving party. It was on a Wednesday. And she says, all right, guys, we're going to have our annual Thanksgiving party and there's going to be pizza and, we're going to have a lesson. And she says, Big George is going to teach the lesson. And then she looked at, and she said this on the microphone. There's about 100 people in the room. And she says, I probably should have told you about that beforehand, huh?
Right.
And then there you go. That's how it started.
Wow. Baptism, clavism under fire.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. So I remember when you came down to an event we had called The Party down in D.C. I think that's when we first met. We talked earlier. We came to that conclusion.
Yeah. And
you came down there by yourself, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that was when I came to that party. I was still deployed in Iraq at the time, and I was on 2 weeks leave. And so during that 2 weeks, I was trying to get in as much dancing as I could. So I was in Philly, went up to New York, danced at Santo Rico, and came down to DC to your party. Because when I looked up dancing in DC, Stuck in Sauce was the first thing that popped up.
Yeah. George, we've been partying for a long time. I got a famous video of you and Orlando Machuca at the Resolution Jam just going crazy. But I've told people I've always been fascinated by how you can move so smoothly on the floor for a gentleman of your size. That's not an easy thing to do,
Yeah, I've always heard that. I never thought too much about it. It's just something that I just took to. Maybe it's my background in sports and movement, but I've always appreciated the compliment.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, George. I may be jumping out of the chronological order. Didn't you one time dance in a group with your senior, or did you not?
I did. It was the group was called Sangre Nueva. And
my man was in there, and he's so underrated, but he can throw down. Arturo was in that group, yes?
Yep, Arturo was part of that group.
Arturo is very underrated. I mean, he got a lot of, because he don't brag enough, he's cool with his stuff, but he got a lot of moves.
Oh yeah, smooth man. Arturo's smooth brother. We got a lot of talent up here in Philly. A lot of real good dancers.
Oh yeah.
That you don't even know, or you don't even realize.
I know. But one thing that I liked about you, George, at one time Philadelphia was as hardcore on one as Baltimore and as Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And you were set on teaching people how to dance on two. And I used to just shake my head and I said, George, Philly ain't never not gonna dance on two. It's never gonna happen. But you kept trying to push it, and then Roland came in and started pushing it as well. And now there are a lot of very good dancers on two in Philly now. Did you think that would ever be that way?
It was a uphill battle, but there were always really good on two dancers in Philly. They just wouldn't be at the parties, and a lot of the reason is the music didn't cater to the style of dance that on two dancers like to dance to. So they would have a lot of underground parties, and I remember I would go to those parties, and we would always have conversations like, "Yo, man, I don't understand why we can't dance to the style of music that we enjoy. We feel like this is good music, and everybody would love it if they just got a chance to listen to it." And so a lot of us would travel to New York or travel down to DC because DC was both on one and on two. And what started happening is as studios started growing and performance classes and teams started, they would travel to congresses and they were getting exposed to on two.
Okay.
But then they would come home and they would dance on one.
Right.
And it didn't make sense. And not that I was ever against dancing on one, because I started, believe it or not, my first style was Cuban style.
Right.
So I dance everything. Okay. But I felt like if you have all these dancers that could dance on two, why can't we create an environment where on two is acceptable in the nightclub or, at the dance studio or everywhere where you dance? And that was my whole mission, not to have on two take over Philly, but at least have it acceptable wherever you go, included.
And so I guess this thus caused you to form Mambodelphia.
Yes, that was the whole reason behind Mambodelphia. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people, you did a good job. And I said Roland started pushing on two as well. And not that there shouldn't be, but there are a lot of very good on two dancers in Philadelphia. That's for sure. I love it up there.
At the time when I first started pushing the Mambodelphia movement, I think maybe one studio, they would do on two mambo for like a week or so and then stop. And there was a point where every studio was offering the classes because, people started asking for it. And now when you go to the parties here in Philly, you see people dancing both on one and two.
Well, what's always was strange is that Barbara and Sonia both could dance on one, on two, and I just never understood why they didn't. They started later, but why they didn't do it early in their studio. But then again, I guess it could be business is business. Why are you going to teach on two on one town? So.
Yeah. They're smart business people, and on one is what sold. Now, if you ask Sonia just doesn't want to dance on two. That's Sonia just doesn't want to do it. Anytime I walk up to her, we'll start dancing. If I start on two, she'll give me a dirty look and say, "Boy, don't you even try
it." That's so funny. So, how did you get to start? I had Mr. Andino on a couple of weeks ago. How did you get to start throwing events with Michael Andino?
Philly's it's a big scene, but small town, so to speak, as far as, everybody knows everybody. And I connected with Mike right from the beginning. And Mike collaborates with most people, especially if you have a good vibe. So me and Mike right from the beginning, we always were connected. And he, Mike, if you're a good if you are talented and you're a good person, Mike will work with you. So it was really that simple. Just through our friendship connection, we just started collaborating on events. I was teaching at his studio for a while. So it started with that. I started teaching at Estilo after I left the Atrium. And then through there, he would bring me in to teach at his parties. And then once I transitioned into DJing, I started DJing a couple of the events as well.
Okay, so you jumped ahead of me. That was my next question. You're throwing me off here. What made you decide to become
All right,
a DJ?
so I always loved the music. When I first got into the dancing, I started collecting music right away. I wanted to know as much as I could about the music because I didn't grow up listening to it. It was in my neighborhood, but I didn't know what that was growing up. So just in the process of collecting the music and being passionate about the music, and also I started doing events with Jose Rodriguez at a club called North by Northwest.
Okay.
So I was teaching there, and because I was always there every week, Jose's just a natural teacher. So he would be teaching and explaining things to me, not because he was, I don't know, I guess that's just who he is. So I was sitting there and I was learning and I was fascinated. But it really became a necessity when I started hosting some smaller parties, because when I was teaching on my own, if your party doesn't have but so many people, you can't really hire a DJ.
Right.
So I did it initially out of necessity, just so that I can DJ my own little small parties. And from there, I just started to build my interest.
I feel you.
Yeah.
I tried to DJ one time, but I'm so self-centered and selfish. All I was playing was big band mambo. I wasn't mixing up my things. So, my DJ career lasted about a week.
Wow.
Lee and them had to come up to me and tell me, no, Tanya and them, no, you playing too much. You playing too much mambo. I didn't care anything about the crowd, but as you know, you can't be a DJ if you don't care about the crowd. You can't be a successful DJ if you can't care about the crowd.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. And so I was fortunate enough that I did have some mentors. I wasn't, initially I would just play the stuff that I like, but I knew that if I really wanted to go further, I needed some training. So ironically enough, and it's funny because I'm not here by myself, I want to pop somebody here real quick. Come on, man, get your big head in here.
I can't get him off of here. I can't. Yeah. Hey, George, you don't know. That's my main man.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I mess with him. Mike Lowry, John, whatever you want to call him. I mess with him. That's my man.
Yeah, man. He wanted to come on and say hi. So I wanted to make sure he popped in.
He was on my mind the whole entire time. I was definitely going to do that segue. I love that thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll get to that.
We got some stories, man, that only him and I and Neil know about, man. I love that. He's crazy. What is that stuff we used to bring at Christmas time? What do you used to call the drink?
Cancel Christmas.
And George, I don't drink a lot, but I was playing them drinking games with Mike. Sometimes he is a wild young man, as everyone knows.
Hey, I'm a new guy now. I'm a daddy, so I'm very responsible.
I know that. That's a big stream.
All my responsibilities out the door.
Hey, John, guess what? I got my AARP card.
AARP! Good job. I'm proud of you, brother.
Hey, George, we would be hanging out in the diners, right? And some of Mike's young friends would be looking at him like, what are you doing with this old man? Where's this AARP card? They said that right in front of my face, man. I'm like, wow. Okay. So, George, how did you get into performing? You came down to D.C. one year. You were at the Salsa Room. You threw the lady up in the air so high we thought she was going to hit her head on the ceiling. What made you get into becoming a performer?
The funny part, Go-Go, is I wasn't into any of that stuff. I wasn't my goal to ever be an instructor, a performer, any of that. I just wanted to dance. But again, so this is when I got back to the atrium. When I was taking classes, I wanted to just get better. And so I wanted to be around the best dancers. And at the time, when I would take dance class. The class thinning out a little bit. And I said, well, where are all these amazing dancers that I see when I'm out at the club? And, I want to dance with them. And they said, well, to do that, you have to dance on the dance team. So for me, I joined the dance team just so I could continue training and getting better.
Okay.
And so, from there, I got a bug because I just have a mindset that when I get into something, I commit to it. I always like to grow. And so once I started performing, I said, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass the team. So it just sort of with the atrium, dancing with Salcedo Sonidos, I believe the name of the team was then. And then from there, traveling up to New York, I used to take classes with Ishmael. And that's when Jacinia, she found me and she was starting a team. And she invited me to be a part of that team, Sangre Nueva, because she just loved, my style and how committed I was. And so I became a member of that team, and that, elevated my game even more. And then from there, I once you're in it, you just kind of get in it. It just kind of takes on a life of its own.
Right. Okay.
And I think the performance you're talking about is when I was dancing with Jackie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so it was two different. So actually, the time I performed with Jackie in DC, I didn't toss her then. The time where we did that trick was when we were in Mexico. Remember, you did the event in Mexico?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. That was the toss up in the air that everybody was like, "Oh my God, what the heck are you thinking?" A lot of people didn't do tricks like that back then, but Jackie was so athletic. I said, all right, let's try this. And Jackie was down for whatever. She was
right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this. You're one of my main men, but it broke my heart when I looked on Facebook and it said Big George is directing a bachata team. Not hardcore on to Big George. I'm like, oh no. No. Now, a lot of people are very talented, and you have to evolve to stay in this business. I understand that.
Right.
Okay. And a lot of people don't work during the day. They don't have real jobs. They do dancing for their life. So they have to do whatever they have to do. So I couldn't get mad at nobody who's been a hardcore salsero for teaching bachata because everybody wants to learn how to dance bachata. I got it. Mm-hmm. My question for you is, Big George, since I know you well, I can be straight with you. Did you start teaching bachata out of not necessity, but because that's where the business was going, or you just like bachata all the time?
So how do I answer this question? The short answer is I do like bachata. I do. I wouldn't say I'm a rabid fan like a lot of, people out there that are hardcore, but I like the music and the dance. But I started teaching it just because I enjoyed teaching and I was asked to do it. So I'll give you the story of how it happened. So I was doing an event at Parks Casino, and Sonia, who she took some time off the scene because she was having kids. She had a couple kids, and she was deciding to make a comeback. So she came to Parks on a Thursday, and this is how long she had been off the scene. There wasn't even bachata being played in the club the last time she was on the scene, right? So she comes back, and all of a sudden, bachata is the whole thing. It came out of nowhere. Sure. And so we danced a bachata song. I think it was to John Legend's All of Me.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. So, after the song, she kind of gave me a look. She was like, oh, my God. She said, you can dance bachata? I thought you were the mambo guy. And so I said, well, I'm a dancer. I dance to everything. Doesn't matter.
All you needed to tell her that you were Big George. And that's all she needed to know.
Yeah, she was, she didn't know. So she was amazed by it. So then, and at that time I was teaching at La Luna because I moved closer to her studio. So I was sort of taking a step back from teaching altogether, to be honest with you. And then he's like, George, what if you just teach once? Can you just teach once a week? And I told her no for about 2 years. And eventually she convinced me to teach once a week. And then she got a phone call from Ataka and Alimana because they wanted to bring Island Touch to Philly. And so Sonia, who was taking a step back from teaching, she was like, well, let me see if George wants to do it. She's like, George, you dance amazing bachata. Why don't, would you be willing to do this? And I thought, because it's Ataka and Alimana, I'll do it. Because I've known them for years. I love what they were doing. And I knew people would enjoy their style. And I thought it would get people just excited just to dance at the studio. So that was my real motivation to do it. Am I a super bachata fan? I love it. I like it. It's cool. Mambo is my number one always. But,
right.
You got to kind of roll with what's happening. You can't be a fixed object.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel you. I actually love bachata.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I don't do it that well, but I've had instruction from a lot of top world-class instructors.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love salsa and mambo more.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want to hear bachata. When I go out, all I want to hear is mambo and salsa.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm big on the two-room concept.
Okay.
I mean, we used to do Latin nights at Lucky Strike. They were good, but even then we would have separate rooms on the big nights. We would have the bachata room over here and the salsa room over here. I'm not big on the 50-50 fusion because sometimes these stupid DJs forget what the ratio that they're playing. I'm a stickler. If you say 50-50, I want 3 bachata, I want 3 salsa. And sometimes these loser bachata DJs be playing 5 or 6 or 7 songs, and then I got to wait all night for a salsa. I got a problem with that. But I do love bachata. I work for DCBX, biggest bachata organization in the world. How could I not like bachata? If I didn't like it, I wouldn't be working with them.
Right.
Even though I mostly deal with the salsa part. Lee and Kat handle all of that. But anyway. So you got into performance just to be performing, okay? You got the teams. You even had Mike Lowry on one of the bachata teams.
I did.
That's when I knew that you were an excellent instructor. I'm like, if he can get this fool to execute that routine, it inspired me. You remember, I think I called you and I said, George, I want to be on the team because if John Lundy could do it, anybody could do it.
Ain't tall enough.
Yeah, that team had a height requirement. You had to be a certain height to be on that team.
Oh my God. Cancel Christmas. That guy's had me so high.
He's smoother than a lot of people would give him credit for it. And I wanted to turn him into something, man. But, he wasn't.
He's too crazy, man. I love him, man. And I know he got my back. So when I'm in Philly, I'll be walking around. Yeah, I ain't worried about it because I know John Lundy got my back.
Well, here's why I had to get him dancing. So in DC, when we met, it was at the DC Bachata Congress. I forget what year it was, but I performed that year. And I remember I wore, basically my costume was like this really shiny vest. So we met that day and he ended up having, what he wore that night was very similar to what my costume was. So he ends up going out dancing and, I'm up in my room. And so all these people kept coming up to him and saying, oh my God, you did so good in your performance tonight. So everybody thought he was me. And so from that point on, anytime, if we were in a certain place, so if people are gonna be thinking he was me, this fool got to get his dance game up. He can't be going out there. Hey, look at Big George, man. What happened to him?
Wow. So it's crazy. So George, you had the honor and pleasure of working with one of the top media companies in the world, not just in Philly, in the world. You were doing some work with Nuevo Tech.
Yeah.
I mean, they just took video production to another level. How did that come about?
Well, those guys were from Philly, and they were doing a lot of stuff at our events, and they were just great guys. And you know, I had the communications background, so I was comfortable interviewing people and being on the mic. So they would always ask. They would ask if, you know, somebody would be willing to do an interview. And I said, yeah, I'll jump on there and interview people. I love having those conversations. That was my way of getting to know things about different dancers that, you know, when you're on the scene and you're dancing, you don't communicate about, you know, everything that's going on, kind of like what you're doing right now. And so that's where it evolved from. And then I did a couple interviews, and those guys, they liked the way that I interview people. So they would ask me to do some more. And especially when we were down in Cozumel, I think I must have did about 4, 5, 6 different interviews with Nuevo. Right. So we were interviewing everybody, and I was having a good time with it. It was fun.
So I guess it was pretty big when you were on a beach in Cozumel and you were interviewing Oscar Hernandez.
Yeah.
Spanish Harlem Orchestra. That was huge for you. Were you nervous?
I was nervous, man. That was an amazing honor for me. That was a huge deal because I love that band. I love their music, and just being there with them was amazing. But then to have the honor to interview them and have a conversation with them, you know, that was awesome.
Let me ask you this, George. I met you through my man. He doesn't hang out anymore. He got married and changed his way. Do you ever talk to Will Pagan?
We communicate a couple times a year. You know, he's guy's big time now, man. He's a big time lawyer, family man. He's doing great things down in North Carolina. So we don't connect as often as I would like, but you know, anytime we talk, it's, you know, it's like we don't skip a beat. You know, he was one of my first instructors. You know, he's the one that really introduced me to On 2.
Really?
Yeah, it was actually him. So I took the class, even though I took my first On 2 class with Beto, it was Will, because Will was a little bit taller. And I needed to train with somebody that could understand what it was like to be tall.
Right.
And so Will got that. So I would do private lessons with him. I would drive an hour and a half every week to do private lessons. Right. And you know, and so he appreciated my commitment, and you know, I appreciated his knowledge and the way he taught it. He gave me my foundation. I give a lot of props to him for me developing into the dancer that I am. Like, if people appreciate the way that I move, you know, I give him a lot of credit for that, because very early on, he didn't just teach me steps or teach me patterns. He actually taught me how to move and how to move to the music, and, you know, how to make patterns with your feet. And he gave me all those fundamentals, and how to lead. You know, he gave me those tools.
Wow, George, thank you so much, because every interview I try to find out something different about the person I'm interviewing that I didn't know. And I had no idea that Will was responsible. So thank you for that. Absolutely. Thank you for acknowledging him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Always.
So I'm good. I'm good now. Okay. So did you know the Cobo brothers when you were down in North Carolina? Had you ever met them while you were down there, when you were coming up?
I did. Yeah, that was, you know, that scene down there was just starting. So if you danced on 2, there was a small circle. It was Will, it was Beto or Mambo Dinamico, and it was the Cobo brothers.
Yeah.
And so those guys, you know, I used to see them and watch them, and, you know, I never took less from them that I can remember, but you know, I did learn a lot watching them. They had a very distinct style, and so there was stuff that I would pick up from them. Those guys are amazing.
Yeah.
And
I would say this about Beto and the Cobo brothers. They're excellent instructors because I'm telling you, one time the North Carolina scene, the followers down there can hang with just about any state.
oh
Any
yeah,
state.
oh
Those
yeah,
ladies down there were tight.
oh yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, I was very spoiled dancing with those ladies down there because you had to be on your game dancing with them because they trained them. They trained. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know how the scene is down there. I haven't been in it in a long time, but they've always had a great social dancing scene.
Yeah.
I would have to say, even though I hate to say it, their followers down there were better than the DC followers.
Yeah, their standard, man, they didn't mess around. Those women down there, they right from the beginning, they would have them on point with their balance, their spinning, their preps, their connection.
Right.
You know, yeah.
So let me ask you this, George. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but maybe I am. Is Mambodelphia, is that still going on? I don't see any events that you have going on with that. Have you given up on trying to make the On-2 movement, or you figure it's there and your work has been done? What's the story on it?
Well, yeah, I think, you know, it was more of a movement. And I've kind of moved on to some other things. So I don't really promote it or push it. You know, just the fact that people still talk about it actually is kind of amazing because I haven't done anything under the Mambodelphia name in a while. A lot of I actually started getting into stuff outside of Latin dancing. So once I pushed into the DJing, I started doing a lot of private events. It's not stuff that most people know, but I do wedding events, private events. When I started DJing, it was funny because the guy is actually here right now off camera. I started working with a DJ that DJs top 40 hip hop and club music.
Okay.
So I did a lot of training and DJing and other events outside of the Latin scene. And that sort of moved me into a whole nother direction in events, a lot of bigger private events. And the name Mambodelphia doesn't translate outside of the Latin dance. You know? So, you know, it makes sense in our world, but, you know, you go to an event where it's, you know, top 40 hip hop or pop, and you say Mambodelphia, people are like, what? Huh?
Right.
They don't get it. So, you know, that's where just, you know, I focus on just Big George, you know, as kind of the brand that I push because it encompasses everything, the Latin, the non-Latin.
Okay. All right. So I was talking to Mike last week, and you remember when we first met, the studios, used to have studio gangs. It was like gangs up there in Philadelphia. But now it seems that all the studios are working together. You know, everybody's working together. There's no drama or anything. How did that occur? You know what I mean? How did that happen?
Well, I think over time, everybody just started to mature, you know, and when the scene was just getting started, everybody was young. And so when you're young, you have an ego. You know, everybody was vying to be the best and, you know, pushing to really cement themselves. But then once the smoke cleared and a lot of the people from the beginning started establishing themselves, we started to realize that, you know, it would hurt the scene if you kept your doors closed. You know, sometimes people will take lessons with you for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then they're going to move on and they're going to go to another studio, and then they're going to pop back into your studio. We started realizing that the scene just moved like this in a circle. And so instead of just trying to fight to keep, you know, everybody in your corner, it just made more sense to just keep an open door and let everybody in. You know, you're always welcome. And, you know, if you stay, great. If you leave, great. You know, you're always welcome back. And I think realize the best scene and quite individual businesses, because all of that divisiveness, would just turn people off.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. That sounds good.
Now, it's not perfect. Now, doesn't mean that there isn't still, disagreements and drama and stuff like that. But, people get over it. People move on. You have your disagreements, you work it out, and then,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. That sounds good. George.
Yeah, man.
So, how did you land the Parks contract? Or did you just go to them, or did they come to you?
They came to me. I was there in the rotation as a DJ. So Parks had their Latin night. There was an entertainment company there, and I was in the rotation as a DJ and instructor. And then the night stopped, and they canceled it. And then, I don't know, maybe a year went by, and then I got a phone call from one of the heads of the entertainment over there at Parks Casino. They remember me as one of the DJs in the rotation, and it was something about me that they thought that I would be a good fit to bring the night back.
Okay.
And so we gave it a shot. I remember we started, and it was once a month, and they had a small budget, so I was teaching and DJing. And if you've been there, imagine I'm teaching on the floor and then had to run all the way up on stage to DJ. But I think the first night we only had about 20 people. But they were patient. I told them it was going to take a little bit of time, and then it built. And I think before it stopped this last time, I think we had a 7-8 year run.
Okay.
So it was a good run.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, George.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I was going to ask you who were some of the hot dancers coming up in the Philly scene who to look out for, but you're not going to be able to remember everybody. And if you name somebody and don't name someone else, they got an attitude. So we're going to scrap that. Right.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for no trouble.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we covered everything pretty much. Yeah, I think we covered everything, George. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your hectic schedule to spend time with me on the show and talk to the old man, since I don't have any friends. I really enjoyed the conversation. Okay. And tell my man Mike Lowry or John Lundy or whatever the hell his name is that I said, what's up? And I appreciate it, George, so much for you taking the time out. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for having me here.
George, I'm going to end it, but stay on for a minute. I can talk to you. I'm going to end the show, but I want you to don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you after the show.
All right.
Thank you.